Hey friends. So I'm hanging out in the studio today and getting some things done. And I started to think, well, I've been thinking about this for the last couple days. I've been thinking a lot about identity. And some things came up, like with Dave and I. We've been shifting our life, like really shifting our life away from work that basically was our identity into a different way of being in the world. And so much of that, so much of homesteading is a part of that shifting identity. Like, how could we make less money or be working less, which doesn't necessarily mean less money, but like how can we do things so our life is more sustainable? So growing our own food was one of the first pieces of that. Um, Raising chicken. And so I've been thinking a lot about identity. How when when I met Dave, he was someone who made a lot of money, and his identity was so much tied into that he had taken that on almost above all else. And I think that meeting me kind of cracked that right open. And he's gone through a huge evolution of figuring out who he is and what he wants to do in this world, and he's still in it. So a couple of things that have come up for me. Identity around, there's the obvious, like motherhood, but the identities I've been thinking about are the identity I had around being a coach, doing this online business, and the identities that have come since, like the identity of sobriety. I am a sober person. I refer to myself as a sober person. When I talk about it, it is like, this is who I am. So I started to think about like how we choose to identify and those identities and what happens when one of them is gone. So I've been in this place of like, so I'm not coaching anymore, but I'm still figuring out then who am I, right? And for me, it's not a very drastic thing because I'm really good at just creating identities. Like I can just grab hold of the next thing, the next thing, the next thing. Whereas I'm noticing my partner, Dave, is struggling more in that area because it's not as easy for him. It's not something that he's having a hard time letting go of the work he used to do that he does not like doing. That kind of sucks his soul away. He's been still holding on to pieces of it. And I was doing that when I was coaching. I was still holding on because I was afraid. Like I was afraid of living for a month with no income. Like what would I do? And I had to make sure that I felt safe before I was able to kind of take that leap and do that. I'm noticing a ton of heartache with him around letting that identity go. There's a lot of fear in that. And so one thing that I've been thinking about is instead of the loss of identity, it's claiming the new stuff. So I'm claiming that I am a homesteader. I claim that. I claim that I am sober. I'm about to reopen my shop. I'm going to claim that I am a shop owner. And in doing so, there is a lifting up that happens where I feel connected and true and like I have something to hold on to. There is one piece of it though that has been tricky for me. So when I decided to stop coaching, and I decided a while ago, but I only just ended in September, there was this giant relief, especially around social media, that I didn't have to show up on social media in the coaching world, creating little things that would lift people up or be part of that, because I've actually been struggling with that. I am not sure that how we are doing this is good. I don't know that it is good for us. And so I have a lot of questions and I'm wrestling with a lot of stuff, but I am happier when I am not on Instagram. And I used to love Instagram. It used to be a lifeline for me. But I am so much happier when I am not there. And I dip my toe back in every now and then, and I'm about to do some stuff for the shop and I will be using it. But I think that knowing that I am not the best version of myself when I am scrolling through, comparing myself to others. So when I left the coaching world, I was like, oh, I can leave all that behind. I'm not even going to compare myself to anybody. But then in the homesteading world, I realized that I was starting to do that. And my feed was filled up with homesteaders, and I was starting to do that again. And I do not want to do that. I do not want to compare myself to anyone. I don't want you to compare yourself to me. I am very careful the things that I show and that I talk about for that reason. Because I think that often when we show certain things, it can instantly create a feeling of lack in others. Now, that is not our responsibility, and it is our responsibility. It's both. It is our responsibility to not make other people feel bad because of our success or because of our choices or because of, whatever, the beauty we surround ourselves with. Our job is to make sure that we are not putting out the vibe that the way we do this is the right way, that there is a right way and there is a wrong way. I'm going to tell you a few things. I have in the past talked about things like, and this is like over the course of many, many years, I'm a health coach, right? So I'm careful. Like once I showed a diet root beer and people wrote to me and they were like, I can't believe you drink diet root beer. I can't believe you would drink diet soda. Well, I drink a diet root beer maybe once a year, and that was my once a year, but it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter how many times I drink a diet root beer. That was my choice. I bought Gatorade for a sick kid, and I had people telling me there was another way you could do other things. I know you can do other things. My kid drinks Gatorade, not my homemade lemonade that I used to be able to give them when they were little. I have been given a hard time for using iceberg lettuce. There are a lot of them. So it gets tiring. It gets tiring after a while. It becomes this, you become like scared to talk about it. And the other day when I went to the grocery store, I did that because I wanted you to see that I go to the grocery store and I buy food in cans and packages. And this house is not filled just with homemade produce, because that is not our real life. Maybe if it was just me and Dave, we might have a very different look to our food, to our grocery shopping, to the choices we make. But like Dave drinks Coke. I would say he cycles through drinking Coke when he's super stressed. I know that he's super stressed because he starts drinking Coke again. And I make him a green tea sweetened with maple syrup or honey all the other times of the year. But when he drinks Coke, I just let him be. And he just does what he does. Sometimes he'll go days without eating, like good food. He'll just subsist on sugar. And that's his life. That is his choice. That is who he is. If my kids want to drink Gatorade, they're going to drink Gatorade, whether I get them a Gatorade or not. So, like, I wanted to make sure that there wasn't this idea that we were living in some bubble. Now, there are many, many homesteaders who would not buy the things that I buy, who would not feed their kids the things that I will let my kids eat, who would be devastated if their partner was drinking Coke. I've known a health coach that, actually probably more than one, but I've known them to get in fights with their partners because their partner was giving their kid boxed cereal. I don't want to be that person. I do not want to be that person. I have gone through phases in my life where I have been that person, where I have cried because somebody has given my kids goldfish, and I don't want to be that person. I think that there is a very fine line where we make choices, and those choices matter to us. It matters to me that the meat that we eat does not come from conventionally raised farms. And at the same time, probably once every few months, my kid will come to the store with me and buy a bag of like buffalo chicken tenders, and I don't say anything. I just let it be, and we do that. Or Eli might have his friends over, and we, get some crap food, and that's what the kids eat. And that doesn't change my identity as a homesteader, but there can be those moments when you're scrolling through and somebody will say something like, it's just super triggering. I'm not even gonna say it because I might say something super specific that somebody actually said, and I don't want to do that because that's not my point here. My point is, there can be something that's said that is incredibly triggering, that instantly makes us say, I did it wrong. And I have gone through that. 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 And I am choosing to remove myself from it. My values around food and homesteading are mine. And I have been able to get Dave and the kids mostly on board. It's amazing that Dave is somebody I met that was spraying glyphosate on his lawn to kill dandelions, and now dandelions are precious to him. Now he calls himself a regenerative farmer, and he believes in it so deeply. So my values and the way I have chosen to be in this world, to show up, and to not shame other people, but to just show this is an option, this is a choice, and here is the information. I can't tell you how many times I just want to get out of the car when I see somebody spraying with that Roundup and just say, can I talk to you about this? Can I talk to you about this? But here's what I know. I know that our yard looks different than most yards in suburbia. And I know that that makes people pay attention. And I know that that makes people curious. And I know that if I continue to talk about it, if Dave continues to let the lawn fill with clovers and maybe is standing with a neighbor and having a chat, and maybe that information passes, and then that information passes, and then that information passes from person to person and person, we start to make a difference, right? So circling back, identity. So I've been thinking a lot about that, about how sometimes, and I'm talking about Dave, I'm using my partner as an example because he's a good example, and he's like my, closest person. And when I'm watching him be so ungrounded, I think, oh, this is identity. There is a lack of identity. And it may just be holding on to what no longer is, and really moving in like he has to regenerative farming, saying, I am a regenerative farmer. And we live in suburbia. And isn't that amazing? Like leaning into, for me, like I am sober. And I think if I didn't lean into that identity so strongly, I don't know that I would be 4 years in without a drink. I'm not sure I would. My identity around that is like the glue. It's the roots. I talk about sacred roots, right? These are the sacred roots that hold us, that identity. Now that does not mean, like, identity can go super wrong. We can identify with something and it just consumes us and it makes us lose who we are. And that's not what we want. Like if I'm identifying myself as a homesteader and then I'm comparing myself to all these homesteaders who are not, who are just, who grow enough potatoes to feed themselves the entire year. Like I could feel less than. And I don't want that. I don't want my identity to be tied to anybody else's accomplishments, successes, failures, or their identity. So there's a lot of I'm taking a lot of time these few gloomy days to ask myself, like, who am I now? It's a big question that I used to ask in my work all the time. Like, you know, the she who was, who am I now, and our becoming. I am someone who. I am someone who, right? I am someone who. And I have so many things there are so many different identities that I love, that I just love, that I am so proud of. You know, that I am a space holder, a space maker, a beauty maker, a magic maker, a story weaver. Like this is my heart, my soul, my spirit. It's all of the things. And anytime that an identity starts to eat away at me, I need to look at that. I need to look at that. You know, I loved being married. I loved being able to say that I was married. And it is a sadness that I still hold, that I am not married. And being married is not something that Dave wants in this part of his life. And I understand why. And that's an identity that I have had to come to terms with, that I have really had to say, okay, what was it about that, you know? And is there anything other than a piece of paper right now that changes that identity between Dave and I? So we just basically started saying my husband, my wife. Sometimes we say my partner. If we're on the phone with somebody, or we're just talking to people, random people who don't know, we just say my husband, my wife. And like, that's our identity. We're not legally married, but in every other sense of the word, we are married. We have a marriage. We have kids that we raise together. So I don't know. This was just like a whole lot of words, because maybe it is something you're thinking about too. And I just want to say, like, we have permission to change that identity all the time. And we have permission to look at an identity that perhaps someone else gave us, that we did not choose, that we did not say, this is who I am, in the like most wonderful, rooted, grounded, whole way. That if someone else gave you an identity, and I have fought against so many of those identities, let me tell you, and eventually it's just surrendering to them and saying, this was not mine. I did not choose this. This is not mine. I surrender this. I surrender this. There can be grief around identity when you let something go and you're moving into something else. There can be a grief in that identity, like divorce, like loss. And there can be a whole lot of joy in deciding who we are, deciding, choosing that identity. You know, for instance, I have ADHD, and I will proudly tell anybody who asks that I do. Dave does as well, a couple of our kids do, and I am super proud of it, because it means that I am special. My brain is special. The way I am in the world makes me special. I don't think I would have the life I have if I did not have this special brain that is constantly looking for new stimulus, that gets bored, so it needs new, that wants passion and obsession to create, that often is called lazy and yet is really just sitting there daydreaming, just so lost in all the thoughts and all the beauty in this world. There's obviously the obvious struggles and challenges, and I believe that those have made me who I am as well. So those identities that sometimes might be seen as a negative or a challenge or a struggle, those identities, if we can really say, this is who I am, this is who I am, and like write it out, write it down, look at it on paper. Look at all the glorious things that you are. It's not a bad little little task to take on, just to see. And then, are there identities that you don't want, or that cause you sadness or pain? And are there identities that you feel like live separately from other identities, right? So I'm just thinking about all this. I wanted to share it while it was on my mind. I hope it offers you something to think about, but more importantly, come chat with me about it. I'm so curious your thoughts. I didn't flesh this out perfectly. This would be easier for me to write than it would be to make a video, and I certainly don't want to bore you by just making a video where I just sit here talking. But it was on my mind, so I decided I would go ahead and just record a few thoughts. So I'd love to hear what you think. Feel free to disagree with me. Feel free to add your own insights into this. I'm thinking about it. All right. Well, cheers. Thanks for being here. Appreciate you.